Thank you very much for having me as part of this Festival of Disruptive Thinking. As Sarah mentioned, I'm an academic at King's Business School. My background is in sociology. I'm currently running a project on professional hybridizations in crypto asset firms. It's sponsored, funded actually by the Economic and Social Research Council UK, and it is all about blockchain firms. So, and within this project, I go on fieldwork in several parts of the world. I returned about 10 days ago from Hong Kong, where I spent 3 weeks doing fieldwork with blockchain firms. And within this context, I also attended the Digital Art Asia Fair. And then Fair Asia, to be precise, DAFA. And when Sarah heard about this, she asked me, well, why don't you come and talk about NFTs and how they disrupt the art world? And I said, all right, because due to my research, I've been interested in the topic of NFTs with my research team as well. We've been interested for quite a while. So I said, yes, sure, let's do about that. Without further ado, I should warn you that this presentation and the discussion on NFTs, I'm not going to give you any investment advice about NFTs, even if some of you might be disappointed, but I should do this, I should formulate this warning from the start. This is not about which NFTs to buy, which NFTs to sell, and so on and so forth. Let me start by sharing my screen with you and giving you a couple of examples about NFTs in the art world with a special focus on digital art. So let me get started. And I have here, I hope you can all see my screen now. And one of the pieces displayed at the Asia World Fair. First of all, I should say thank you to the organizers. I'm sharing these photographs, they are my own photographs from the art fair, with their permission. So one of a centerpiece actually was an installation, a digital piece of art by Refik Anadol, who is a Turkish artist. And as you can see, it was auctioned by Sotheby's. You can see here, hopefully in several lots, there were at least 4 lots of this piece of digital art. And the estimate was between 3.5 million and 5.5 million Hong Kong dollars. You have to divide by 10 in order to convert to pound sterling. Well, it sold for 39.5 million. So it's almost 4 million, 3.9 million pounds. So it's more than 10 times the lower estimate. And let me share with you, I'm going to provide further examples, but now let me share with you another video just for you to see how this piece of digital art looks like. So you could see that in the second run, apologies, it's my fault. What's so special about this? Well, it's a couple of giant screens, and all this piece of digital art is actually at the bottom a software code. But it illustrates a couple of problems which have been around in the art world for quite a while, namely the authenticity and singularity of this art piece. Assuming I had the code, software code of the artist, nobody would prevent me from replicating this piece time and time and time again. And if I replicate it and if I bring copies on the black market, so to speak, then its value, the value of, first of all, I wouldn't be able to distinguish anymore which one is the original, which one is the copy, how many copies do I have there, and this would impact the value of this artwork. So, and these are problems that have been around for quite a while in the realm of art. How do we make sure that a piece of art is unique, especially when that piece of art can be mechanically replicated? And some of you who are I'm pretty sure who are familiar, for instance, with critical thinkers and cultural thinkers such as Walter Benjamin, or Jean Baudrillard will recognize the problem. So, and this is exactly the space where NFTs intervene, because NFTs are meant to ensure that this uniqueness, this authenticity of a piece of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, to paraphrase Walter Benjamin, is kept as such. So what is an NFT? NFT stands for non-fungible token. Right? Why non-fungible? Because it is unique. So to put it like this, it's a unique representation of a unique piece of art. It's a unique identifier of a singularity or of a rare asset. Let's say I have a limited edition of a digital artwork, and each exemplar of this limited edition will receive its own unique identifier. Of course, this identifier is a piece of software code. Now, while I was working on field work in Hong Kong, I asked a couple of legal scholars around about their understanding of NFTs. How do they understand NFTs? And some of them said, well, an NFT is a virtual representation of a virtual asset, but not necessarily a virtual asset. It can be other types of assets as well. This representation is not a mere copy of the asset or not a mere digital copy of the asset. So having said this, it means that NFTs can be used as unique identifiers or as unique virtual representations of a rare or unique assets in domains outside the art world. And indeed, nowadays, NFTs can be used and are used in supply chains. They are used in real estate markets. They are used in the collectibles market. They are used in the gaming world. So NFTs as virtual representations or unique identifiers of a unique asset, of a singularity, are applicable outside the art world as well. So we shouldn't make the mistake now of thinking that NFTs are applicable only to collectibles or only to the gaming world or only to the art world. No, it is not like that. Actually, we find quite a number of applications of NFTs in real estate or in supply chains. So it's more complicated than just the art world. Their domain of applicability is wide. So, but why the art world? What happens here? Let me give you another example now. You have this example from the same artist, Refik Anadolu, as I mentioned, I hope. He's a Turkish artist. And from the same series called Machine Hallucinations, the first piece you saw was called Machine Hallucinations Space Metaverse, and this one is Machine Hallucinations Galaxy. Right, and you see here that you have a non-fungible token, which is the unique identifier of this piece. And you see here that you have the token ID, and you have a smart contract address, and you also have the estimate. So you can bid, in this case, in Hong Kong dollars, for this piece of art. And if you acquire it, then you get not only the piece, but only its virtual representation, its unique identifier. in the form of a non-fungible token. In fact, if you look closely and if you read the entire text here, you'll see that you'll get not only the artwork, but you'll get the physical certificate, you'll get a custom computer with software, and a Samsung frame to be shipped to the buyer, right? I'm going to come back to all these aspects later. So how do we do that? How do we connect NFTs with digital art, but not only? Well, these unique identifiers, these virtual representations, are located on blockchain. To be more specific, in this case, on the Ethereum blockchain. So in order for me to be able to acquire such a piece of art, I would need to have the following. So I would need to have a wallet. In this case, I hope you're seeing it on my screen now. I would need to have what is called a MetaMask account, which is basically a wallet. I would need to have money in my account, in this case, Ethereum, in my account. And then I can go and bid for any work of art. In this example I'm giving here from the Digital Art Fair Asia collection by using my wallet and paying in Ethereum. Right. For those of you who are maybe not very familiar with these terms, a blockchain is nothing else but a distributed ledger. And Ethereum, many of you have heard of it, is a crypto asset which is implemented in its, or better said, on its own blockchain. So if we want to, bid for an art piece on the Ethereum blockchain, I have another example for you now. So this is another piece of digital art called the Waterfall of Language, as you can see. And it was auctioned exactly in this form on the Ethereum blockchain, and the price started at you cannot see very clearly here, but I can tell you that the price started, the auction started from a bidding price of 3.33 Ethereum. You have to keep in mind that an Ethereum is worth a little about 3,000 pounds at today's price. Actually, it's 3,162 pounds in today's prices. So we can bid for this piece of digital art on the Ethereum blockchain, and once we acquire it together with its unique identifier, or with its virtual representation, the NFT. Let me share this with you. So this is me, but this is the piece of digital art. So why use this apparently complicated system on blockchain, pay in Ethereum, acquire the NFT, the virtual representation of the digital art, set up a MetaMask wallet, put Ethereum in my wallet, and so on and so forth? What are the advantages? Well, one advantage, I already mentioned, the fact that each piece of digital art in this case, but not only, is treated as a singularity. We have a unique identifier attached to it. And then with that, it is argued, we can solve a problem of a series of problems related to copying indefinitely works of art, related to fraud, related to faking works of art. And all these are problems that have plagued the world of art and of collectibles, among others, for quite a while, because we encounter every now and then the issues related to faking works of art, digital or non-digital, or collectibles, issues of fraud, and so on and so forth. So that's a first advantage, it is argued. But there is another advantage. Think of the following. When an artist, a visual artist, sold a piece of art, he got paid for it, but artists, visual artists, didn't get any revenues from subsequent sales of their creations in the art market. Assuming I'm an artist and I'm selling one of my creations, of course I will get paid for that. I will get the price for that piece I am selling. But if that piece is resold by the person who has acquired it, by the buyer, I will not get anything, any royalties from that sale in the secondary art market. Well, NFTs make possible for the artist to get a stream of royalties, to create a stream of royalties from every subsequent sale and resale of their creations. Right? And this is a situation akin, similar with that of musicians who get royalties every time their musical creations are performed in public, right? But visual artists didn't have the same situation. And now it is argued, they argue, that this will improve their situation because they will be able to participate in the stream of revenue created in the secondary art markets when their own creations are transacted. And that is a significant improvement. Well, yes, but let's think of what this implies. This implies, or requires, better said, this requires that we have a liquid secondary art market, a secondary art market in which such digital creations are bought and sold all the time. Do NFTs increase liquidity? Yes, it is argued that NFTs do indeed increase liquidity in the art market for digital art. And not only. To what extent a very liquid secondary art market for digital art will emerge out of this, that remains to be seen. It is too early to tell. So summing up to this point, what are the advantages of the NFTs? It's said they solve a problem of authenticity, they solve a problem of traceability. Since all these transactions are done on the Ethereum blockchain, we can see anytime we can trace back in time the previous owners of a particular art piece, and we have full transparency information about the prices at which a particular piece has been bought and sold in time. And then the third advantage, we have a royalties stream for the artist from the secondary market, a royalty stream that did not exist before. Currently, we already have a couple of platforms for digital art. OpenSea is the largest one, much larger than the second place. I think OpenSea, the transaction volume is totals a little above $10 billion currently. But in addition to OpenSea, there are other players in the market as well. So what does this lead to? First of all, I've already mentioned a couple of times the word secondary market for digital art, and this implies that we don't regard the art and digital art especially as a under aesthetic criteria or exclusively under aesthetic criteria anymore. We regard digital art as a financial asset. Well, you'd say that's nothing new. Art has been already seen as a financial asset for a long time now. Yes, but in this case, digital art can become an investment vehicle, and a lot of venture capitalists are betting actually on digital art becoming an investment vehicle in the foreseeable future, right? And they are betting on the creation of a liquid secondary market. This, however, should not lead us to the conclusion that all artworks will increase in value. That would be completely unwarranted. As in every market, financial market, and I hope you're familiar with this, we see falls in value as well, not only steady increases in value. So the fact that we have a digital secondary market for digital art, that we have an increased liquidity, due to NFTs, does not mean in any way that all pieces of digital art will steadily increase in value over time. How they will behave how the prices will behave in the secondary market, that remains to be seen. It is too early to tell now. Well, another aspect to be discussed here is provided by the following. First, we have, and we always had in the realm of art, a certain stratification or certain distinctions between highbrow, middlebrow, and lowbrow art. And we have and had successful artists, moderately successful artists, and less successful artists. We also had intermediaries. We had art galleries, and not necessarily top-end art galleries, middlebrow art galleries as well. We had auction houses and so on and so forth. Will these intermediaries disappear? Will this kind of stratification of the art world go away under the impact of the NFTs? That remains to be discussed. An additional aspect here, and I think it's an area where the NFTs have an impact, is provided by the boundaries between the world of digital art, the world of collectibles, the world of gaming, and the world of fashion. We see that NFTs have blurred these boundaries. NFTs are actively implemented or minted, I should say, in the world of collectibles as well. What I mean with collectibles are, for instance, trading cards. You know, when I was a child, I used to collect stamps together with my friends. In the same way, it becomes imaginable that we will collect in the future, and it's already happening, digital objects, varieties of digital objects, not only stamps or not only trading cards of football players, basketball players, and so on and so forth. In this world of collectibles, NFTs are already a very significant presence. And they contribute to blurring the lines, blurring the boundaries between the world of art as we knew it and this world of collectibles. And then we have a world of gaming where NFTs are used as well in order to acquire and trade different objects, digital objects, used in different games, swords, shields, spells, and so on and so forth. And then we have the world of fashion. And in the world of fashion, we already knew we had and we have increased collaborations between digital artists and fashion houses. And some of these collaborations are geared towards setting up minting NFTs for particular objects and for particular fashion objects, to put it like this. So all these boundaries between these four worlds, art, collectibles, gaming, fashions, are blurred more and more by the use of NFTs. So that's another aspect which needs to be discussed here. And then the main question, one of the main questions, not only is, will we see NFTs changing the middle ranges of the art market? It's been argued, for instance, NFTs make possible for unknown artists, for marginal artists to present their work, to display their work, and to enter the art market, which was more difficult before due to these intermediaries. You don't need to find a gallerist anymore to expose your work. You go straight on OpenSea with your work. Then you don't have these intermediation fees, or they are much smaller because OpenSea takes fees. right? And OpenSea takes fees, and other platforms take fees as well, but these fees are much smaller than the fees of galleries and so on and so forth. It remains to be seen whether NFTs will change this middle range of the art market. And it's an open question because of several aspects here. One is related to the resilience of institutions. We've seen, and you've seen hopefully in this example, that big auction houses or galleries haven't disappeared from this landscape of NFTs and digital art. They are very active. So they continue to be, they've expanded into this world. So intermediation hasn't gone away. Um, Another aspect is that technology and the technology used in order to set up a viable digital art world, environment, if you want to put it like this, is more complex and not reducible to NFTs. You've seen in the examples I've shown that Samsung was actively involved in the organization of the Digital Art Fair Asia. And Samsung is not the only technology concern or corporation involved in this process. Why are they involved? Because they have a specific technology product to offer and to tie in with digital art and with NFTs, namely the frame. In the same way in which in non-digital art we have canvas and we have oil and we have a frame, in digital art we also have a frame, only it's an electronic frame. It's a computer display made to look like the display of a canvas, or it's an electronic canvas, if you want to put it like this. Samsung is not the only technology company intervening here. There is at least another one, a Japanese company, Bamono, and they are launching in December their own range of products. They are available for, I've seen it, that they are already available for pre-ordering, and there are other players as well. So in the same way, and that's very relevant for this middle range of the market, in the same way in which I might need, a canvas and with oil paint on it as a support for my work of art to display on my wall, I'm going to need, it is argued, especially in its middle range, a Samsung frame or mono frame to display my newly acquired digital art piece on my wall in my living room for everybody to see. Galleries are going to need these technological devices for their own galleries. And actually, I know from the research we are conducting that galleries in several major art centers, Tokyo, for instance, are thinking actively about setting up uh, digital art galleries using these technologies. So that's one big aspect, namely the fact that the technological material substratum of digital art is still there and is still required. You still need to display that piece of art, and it's not on your phone. Right. The other aspect, also important here, technological aspect important here, is that an NFT has its uses. So it's a unique identifier tied to that unique piece of digital art, and it enables me to trace all the past transactions, for instance. But it doesn't tell me whether that unique piece of digital art has been indeed created by that particular artist. And this is where other initiatives intervene. For instance, Adobe is actively working together with other companies and software developers in creating the so-called Content Authenticity Initiative, in creating a set of protocols for certifying a piece of digital art in the process of their production, not after that piece has been finished and uploaded, for instance, on OpenSea. or displayed in a digital art gallery. So this technology, content authentication in the production of that content is also very relevant. And that's different from NFTs. So all in all, based on what I've observed, intermediaries do not go away in these digital art markets. Auction houses, galleries, also online platforms are still active there. And my hunch is that, as I said already a couple of times, is that it's going to be especially in this middle level where these intermediaries are going to still play a significant role by expanding and embracing these technologies, not by shying away from them. And we're already seeing that, actually. So, all in all, are NFTs, transforming the art scene and especially the digital art scene? Based on what we are observing, to a certain extent, yes, in the sense of making it more transparent up to a certain extent, in the sense of making art markets or digital art markets more liquid up to a certain extent, and in the sense of having this potential for creating a stream of future revenues for visual artists. At the same time, we shouldn't discuss NFTs out of context. There is a broader technological context here related, as I said, to the involvement of software companies in authenticating content as it is produced, and also related to the involvement of big technology corporations in creating the material substratum of displaying digital art, right? This being said, I'm going to close my talk by mentioning a couple of open issues. What are these open issues? Well, there are a series of open issues related to how to regulate art markets and digital art markets. We see that hopes are pinned now on an expansion of secondary markets for digital art, secondary markets that are liquid, much more liquid than before. And this requires a regulation with respect to the disclosure of buyers and sellers, identity of buyers and sellers, and so on and so forth. But also with respect to a series of perhaps deeper legal issues, such as what am I buying when I'm acquiring an NFT? Am I buying the asset or its representation, its unique identifier only? Or am I acquiring both? Legally speaking, these are still open problems which will need to be solved in the process of expanding these markets. Right. Another aspect here, which is still open, is that of technological standards and technological compatibility. To what extent will I be able to use an NFT across platform? To what extent do we see standards emerging for cross-platform use of NFTs? That's another open question here. And of course, software developers, several companies are actively working on these issues. And the third and interesting issue is, to what extent are we going to see the emergence of barter systems? Let's say, can I barter a couple of music NFTs against a couple of visual digital art NFTs? And if yes, how? So all these are exciting developments for the future. And I haven't even mentioned here the emergence of what we call it's not a metaverse or the metaverse, it's metaverses. So the emergence of several metaverses and art, the question whether art is going to have one or several metaverses and in what format. this will happen. How they will overlap with the metaverses for collectibles, gaming, or maybe fashion. So all this being said, a couple of host of interesting questions awaiting exploration. But this being said, for the time being, I will stop here and I will take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was absolutely fascinating. So yeah, to the audience, please do put your questions in the chat. I've got a couple that I'm very happy to kick off with if there aren't any just yet. And I guess with COP26 kicking off today, it would be remiss for me not to mention the environmental impact of blockchain technology. It's said that a single Ethereum transaction can consume as much electricity as an average US household uses in an entire week. So do you think that we can equate blockchain transactions and therefore the kind of bidding and buying on with NFTs with carbon emissions?
Thanks, Sarah. So I should say the following here. There are at least two aspects to be emphasized. One is NFTs are not used only in the art world. They're also used in the supply chain world, where they can perform a critical function with respect to evidencing the authenticity of spare parts. For instance, we wouldn't want, let's say, fake spare parts in a Boeing or in an Airbus plane. So there are issues of safety, of security here that can be handled with the help of NFTs. That's a preliminary to my question. The second part of my question and my answer, and it answers you directly, is I think it's more important to look at what kind of energy is consumed here. Is it green, renewable energy, or is it coal-based or oil-based energy? Because it makes a difference. If, let's say, Ethereum transactions consume renewable energy based on hydroelectric power or wind power, and there's a totally different thing if they consume, coal-based or oil-based electricity. It's not the same thing. Now we have a mixed picture actually, in the sense that for Bitcoin and also for Ethereum to a lesser extent, the electricity consumption has been mixed. Part of it comes from renewable sources, mostly hydroelectric power, but part of it doesn't. And what we need to do here is first to look closer to see what part actually comes from green power, from renewable sources, and what part doesn't, and how to expand the renewable part of this. And then, in addition to this, we can use this process in order to push for more use of renewable power. So instead, I would say, instead of just condemning, the blockchain industry for its electricity consumption, we need to look close at the ratio. How much comes from hydroelectric? How much comes from coal burning? And how to increase the part of renewables in this mix, or maybe make it dominant.
Sure. I mean, I think you can weigh that up against galleries and the kind of traditional physical art market where you have pieces of art shipped across the world, on flights, and the kind of the amount of electricity that it takes to make a gallery or a museum run. It'd be interesting to kind of see how they stack up side by side.
I believe that in this definitely the art world, like our academic world, like other worlds, also use energy. It's unavoidable. We need again to look at the mix of what kind of energy they are using and how much. I haven't seen any calculations until now or estimates how much electricity does actually or do art worlds use. But my hunch is that this is not going to decrease. So if you want me to take out my crystal ball and look into it now, I would say the following. in the future, this digital art will expand at the mid-level. You know, all these for buyers who are not who cannot pay £4 million for big installation, but would like to have in their living rooms or wherever a piece of digital art, and they are going to acquire a frame from Samsung or from Mono, and they are going to acquire maybe some pieces from the galleries down their street. Right, and this is going to increase electricity consumption for galleries and also in homes to a certain extent. So I don't see this decreasing if we assume that digital art is going to expand and become mainstream.
Sure.
Right, and this raises again the issue of what kind of mix are we using here, and how do we make this more efficient?
Interesting. I'm going to ask another question because I can't see any in the chat at the moment. And I wanted to pick up on the point you mentioned about how NFTs have kind of leveled the playing field in respect to access to the art market for different artists. So the traditional art market has these kind of gatekeepers and often revolve around kind of white male artists. So I'm really interested in your thoughts around how this is creating more access to artists of color, women artists, LGBTQ artists, neurodiverse artists. There's been a lot around there. Neurodiversity in NFTs.
Actually, my answer would be yes, I attended this digital art fair in Hong Kong, and I went to several talks, and I attended a couple of talks by digital artists themselves, and some of them started by saying, well, I'm a neurodiverse person. And they give a little, biographical details. So based on this, yes, I would say access is increased.
Interesting.
In this respect, and I would expect that with these digital art platforms, yes, this gives a platform like OpenSea makes it easier for artists from different backgrounds, different sexual orientations, different neural abilities, different genders, and so on and so forth, to display their work, and it's a gateway for them. It's not the only one, but it's a gateway, so they get more attention. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're well connected. It doesn't matter like it did before, how well connected, how well networked you are in the world of Christie's or Sotheby's and so on and so forth. So yes, it increases access in this respect.
Fabulous.
I am not saying that it doesn't matter anymore if you're well connected in the world of Christie's or Sotheby's, because I do believe that it still matters.
Of course. I mean, Silicon Valley has its own gatekeepers. I think there are hierarchies kind of no matter which kind of world we're looking in. We've got some questions for the audience. I'll read them out to you.
Yes.
We've got here about, could ordinary people easily create their own NFTs? And on what platform, what kind of platforms do people use to create NFTs?
Well, an NFT is a unique, as I said, an NFT is a unique identifier for a singular object. So my first question would be, what's your singular object? What do you want to create a unique identifier for? Do you want to create a unique identifier for a spare part for an aircraft? Do you want to create a unique identifier for, let's say, a villa designed by a well-known architect, which is also a singularity? Do you want to create an NFT for the unique piece of digital art, and so on and so forth? So when I'm asked how easily could ordinary people, yes, but for what? What's your singularity? what's the domain of your singularity, and according to this, you can more or less easily create your NFTs. But in the art world, at the entry level, it is considered if you go on OpenSea, yes, you can easily create. You have to pay a fee for it, but it's a relatively modest fee. But you can relatively easily create your own NFT. Generally speaking, as I said, an NFT is a unique identifier. It's a piece of software which identifies something unique. What's that unique thing? There is no general answer. There is no general recipe. So you take 2 lines of code and 1 line of this, you mix them together, and here's no.
Great. We've got another question here about valuation. So with the physical and digital art worlds, do you think the way that art is valued has changed with NFTs and art?
Yes, I actually do believe that. I believe that based on what I've observed, I believed that, look, in the physical art world, there have been valuation criteria established for a long time, and we have several professions coalescing around this valuation criteria. We had art historians specialized in a particular, even in a particular artist. We had chemists doing analysis of the oil painting, doing analysis of the canvas. We have physicists doing analysis of the same, and so on and so on, spectroscopy, and so on and so forth. So yes, they are specific in aesthetic terms, material terms. We have specific valuation techniques in the physical art world. Well, in the digital art world, these are just emerging now. The entire debates are emerging around because as in the process of digital art becoming mainstream, so to speak. And I'm not talking only about aesthetic criteria, aesthetic valuation, also about authenticity valuation. It's an intrinsic part of valuation. Is that piece really created by Alex Preda? I'm just saying. Or not. And then we have the financial valuations, and we are seeing here quite a few interesting movements in the digital art world related to NFTs. So to answer your question shortly, yes, I do believe that these processes are not the same. And there is work done on that. To give you an example, there is research done by a Dutch academic, Olaf Veldhuis, who established in 2005, so 16 years ago, that in the art galleries of Amsterdam, at least, canvases were priced by size. Well, can you price digital art by size? No, because that would be ludicrous, because I can scale it easily and adapt it to a couple of standardized sizes of Samsung frame or of Mono X and so on and so forth. So these processes are different.
Great, thank you. We have another question to touch on your points around regulation. And do you think NFTs are going to meet a lot of legal challenges of regulation? And to what extent could it be interesting for a business lawyer to specialize in these? Some career advice, Alex.
Yes.
I'm joking, I'm joking.
Well, it depends again what kind of NFTs. In some domains, such as supply chains, the use of NFTs is more easily accepted by regulators because the use of NFTs meets actually some regulatory criteria. So it's an answer to an already existing regulatory demand, right? It's a different situation when the NFTs do not meet such criteria, but raise a series of problems, as it happens among others in the art world. Legal challenges, yes, I think there are series, as I mentioned, there are a series of legal problems that needs to be solved as these markets go mainstream, expand, and become more liquid. So if I acquire an NFT, and the NFT is a unique identifier of a unique piece of digital art. What do I own? Do I own the identifier, or do I automatically own the piece of art as well? Legally speaking, that's completely unclear now.
Great, thank
So
you.
very still legal, and legal scholars acknowledge that.
So I think, yes, probably a lot for a business lawyer to potentially look into if they were to specialize.
Plus, generally speaking, we've heard recently repeated calls for regulating more the art markets that are, compared with other types of markets, much less regulated.
Interesting.
Much less regulated. We have a series of problems not related to NFTs as well, which need to be addressed in the art markets. Identity of the buyer, identity of the seller, and so on and so forth.
So to kind of keep going off that, we've got another question here about how people in the NFT space can avoid being scammed by fake NFT artists.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. NFTs are not not magic dust. I sprinkle NFTs everywhere and all the problems disappear. No, I don't see it like this. There is going to continue to be although NFTs are advocated for the amount of transparency they provide in tracking transactions on the blockchain. But as I mentioned already, when it comes to content creation, NFTs cannot solve that. There are other approaches there. Content of how do you authenticate content? Because as Anelka said, yes, you're running the risk of being scammed by fake artists who create an NFT related to, I don't know what. That's a real problem. So NFTs have their advantages, but also their limitations. They are not, as I said, they're not magic dust. I cannot sprinkle them everywhere and everything will be all beds of roses and unicorns hopping around.
All right, so we've got, I'm going to take the liberty of the last question if there aren't any more. So my final question is, are NFTs the new Beanie Babies? Is this a bubble? Is this sustainable, or do you think we need to kind of build more infrastructure around it?
Let me answer this in the following way, with an analogy with the situation in London's financial markets from around 300 years ago. When they started the first financial markets, they had a lot of projects and they were imagining a lot of companies doing all sorts of miraculous things. Very few of them survived, if any, but financial markets remained as an institution and consolidated and developed. The same is going to happen with NFTs. To a certain extent, yes, we are seeing a lot of, as you mentioned, Sarah, Beanie Babies projects. I think in the world of collectibles, there is a lot there that can be discussed. Or in the world of, the so-called metaverse and these projections that we are going to spend half our income on digital objects such as digital Preda bags and so on and so forth. Yes, we see here a lot of a lot of projections, a lot of imagination at work. But my hunch is that while some bubbles are going to burst, I expect that NFTs are going to stay. NFTs are going to stay. They are not going to disappear. So there will be a process of consolidation. They have real uses in some domains, including here digital art. Bubbles are going to burst at some point, but the solid part is going to stay.
Fabulous. If there are no more questions, we're coming up to time. Thank you so much, Alex, for this fascinating talk and sharing your expertise and your experience with us. Thank you, everyone who engaged and came today. It was a real pleasure. I'm hoping you're enjoying this event and the rest of the festival as well.
Thank you very much for having me, Sarah.